How is everybody doing? Strength Chat episode 152, and today I've got a very special guest for you. Today I'm joined by an athlete and a coach, having competed in powerlifting and weightlifting, and is now a super mum. Today I am joined by Meg Scanlon. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. A little bit snowed in at the minute.
Oh,
We've had,
really?
I don't know whether it's gone pretty dark now, but yeah, it started snowing on Thursday, and it doesn't look like it's shifting
Oh,
anytime soon. How are you? What have you been up to?
I'm just momming around. Pretty much just taking care of the twins and starting to move a little bit. And that's about it. But it's winter here too, but we're lucking out. So far, we haven't had too much snow.
Oh, okay. And how are the twins getting on? Has it been a little bit of adjustment? I know you've been obviously on your Instagram and everything. You've been getting a little bit back into training, but how's everything been going?
Good. I mean, I had no idea what to expect. So these were my first children, right? And children 1 and 2. First, in a way, I think that's a blessing, right? Especially when you have twins. You have another too. But everything's going really well, just busy. And the girls are growing, and hopefully I'll be growing some muscles back and we'll be good.
Oh, nice. And how was because over in the US, obviously it's lockdown has sort of like stopped a little bit, and gyms have been reopening. How was sort of that being over the last year or so? Has it affected you too much, or affected your coaching, or how has that been?
Yeah, kind of crazy. And depending on where you are in the US, it's also very different.
Yeah.
So some places gyms are still shut down in some places they've always, and in other places it's kind of in between. So I live right outside of Boston in Massachusetts, and it's kind of relatively conservative, but gym never completely shut down. Probably they're in Boston proper right now, they are, but outside of that, they've been open to some capacity, which is a great thing. Personally, I have a gym reg. It hasn't affected me personally. And then obviously during the whole lockdown, pretty much I was pregnant. So I'm just kind of getting back to training without growing babies inside of my belly at the same time. And it's definitely affected me professionally as a coach than personally.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Depending on my lifters, some of them don't. So it's definitely affected me more as a coach than a lifter.
Okay. Because yeah, I know. Just catching the little bit of that there. A lot of the lifters that I've been coaching have been lucky enough to have sort of garage gyms, but
yeah.
I know for a lot of people, I know in the first lockdown at the start of last year, I kind of loaned kit out to members, and then realised, oh, actually, I need to get some kit myself. So, but how it fell over here in the UK, the first lockdown, it was right before sort of the qualifiers for the national championships. So myself and a lot of the lifters that I coach had been sort of in our peak leading up to the competition, and then we went into lockdown. So we kind of went from lifting reasonably heavy and low reps to then changing training round completely.
Really?
A lot of the people who had garage gyms were able to do some form of like a mock meet, but for the vast majority it's been a little bit stop start with the closures and everything. But yeah, having a garage gym and being able to keep on top of that, I think a lot of people have sort of looked to get some more equipment. For everyone,
which is no easy feat within itself right now.
I know, yeah, definitely. A couple of people have been messaging me about where's the best place to get kit and everything like that, and I think it's a lot of people are in the same boat trying to get a little bit of kit. But for everyone listening who might not know your background in competing in coach and how you got into coaching, just want to give a little bit of a background to yourself.
Sure. So I compete as a powerlifter and weightlifter, much more competitive as a powerlifter than a weightlifter. For powerlifting, I have competed as a 57 and 63 in the USAPL, and have gone to Worlds as a 57 in 2015. I don't even remember. That's so bad. It's so confusing because it's skipped a year. But whenever the last one was, 2019, I was a 57. And then for weightlifting, I started weightlifting probably about 3 years ago at this point. And I qualified for the USAW Nationals. Haven't been, not that there was one, but I was pregnant. So eventually, hopefully that's kind of the goal, is to go to USAW Nationals as a weightlifter. Coaching, I've been coaching longer than really for my whole professional career in different avenues. And it's kind of grown with me as I've grown. I did play college soccer or football, right? And started running after that as a transition. I graduated college, on the 11 years ago at this point, 12 years ago. So not super recently. And strength sports were not as big as they are right now with women in general. CrossFit was kind of, just getting popular, and powerlifting work exploded like it has right now. So I started running as a way to stay competitive and slowly transitioned to lifting. And professionally, I started, as a personal trainer, training people general fitness. And then I started to get more into the athletic side of things, but thinking teams. So like team-based strength. And slowly but surely that kind of grew with me. And now 95% of all of my clients are athletes that lift, that power lift.
Yeah. Oh, cool. And what was the what did you just fancy giving weightlifting a go and giving it a try? Because I know usually it's kind of maybe sometimes the other way around, that weightlifters will give powerlifting a go rather than powerlifters are giving weightlifting a go. What did you just fancy a change? Or?
So it's kind of funny. It's something I've always been interested in, mostly because it's a beautiful sport. Let's be honest. It's so technical. It's very pretty to look at. And I did grow up doing gymnastics, and I think there's so many similarities between the two and how technical it is. I started weightlifting after my first powerlifting nationals. Someone recommended to me that I start weightlifting, I think because of how I squatted. So it kind of seemed like a strange transition, but I was new to powerlifting at the time too, new to powerlifting. And so I kind of said I'd give it a go. And it was fun to be new at something and learn something again. And to be honest, have zero expectations, terrible, and kind of be able to grow over time. And I've stuck with it. Now I really enjoy it because I still enjoy the technical aspect of it and that I'm constantly learning, but it also makes me feel like athletic, and I enjoy that too.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think the weightlifting side of things is a little bit more associated with sort of like team sports and athletes a little bit more, because it's used within that environment. It's a little bit more powerful. But and it is a lot more technical. And when someone throwing 200 kilos above their head is, right, maybe a little bit more impressive than, 200 kilo off the floor. Still both impressive in their own right. But, there's a little bit more technical than the other. Just on a little bit of a tangent there, do you think having not been in powerlifting for, a massive amount of time and then transitioning to weightlifting, do you think that's probably worked in your favor a little bit, rather than potentially people who have competed in powerlifting for a long time going to weightlifting? Because there can be that argument of, mobility, especially, when you bench quite a lot. I know for me, I have to keep on top of my shoulder mobility quite a lot. The more I bench. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I feel like I fall in a weird category because I'm pretty mobile naturally, and pretty flexible. I did gymnastics for a very long time, and I kind of feel like it's never gone away. Like those people that are not freakishly mobile, but up there, it was never a worry for me when I transitioned to weightlifting. I have to work on it. I can sit at the bottom of a squat very comfortably with my arms over my head. So it wasn't something that I necessarily had to work on. The weightlifting, you're moving so fast and explosively, and that's the goal of it, right? To move the weight fast. And then powerlifting, I'm probably one of the slowest powerlifters there is. And that just never carried over, unfortunately. But
Yeah, well, it's horses, it's horses for courses. With powerlifting, a lot of people talk about bar speed and that sort of stuff, but the goal is to complete the lift, however long that takes. Whereas the weightlifting is a little bit has to be a little bit more explosive. So obviously I sent over a couple of topics in mind, and when you said about there, getting involved in powerlifting, and it was just general strength training that you were focusing on, the whole idea of when people first get involved with training, and it's a little bit more of a linear progression or linear sort of periodization. Why does that benefit beginner lifters so well? Why is that so useful to start off with?
Yeah, I think it's simple, right? I think any new lifter, and personally coming into powerlifting, I had a huge strength background. It just wasn't specific for 1 rep max. So I came in with this huge base and already strong, but even then I could still follow linear progression for a substantial amount of time because I never trained for 1 rep max before. It's something that you can honestly find a program on the internet, right? That's going to be and will follow linear progression, and you're going to see success from that. So it's an easy way to get into the sport. If you're thinking about dipping your toes, right? You're not quite sure if it's for you or not. And the other thing that I think is great about it is the fact that you get to see that, and that's so motivating for new lifters. New lifters just want to be stronger, that's why they're getting into it. And especially in a day and age where you're seeing so many huge lifts, right, on Instagram or YouTube, whatever, it's something that as a new lifter, you see these things and you're thinking, maybe I'll never be capable of that. Who knows? But I want to get stronger. Seeing your weight progress week to week, month to month is something that's so motivating, and something that you realize that everyone starts in a different place, but everyone isn't starting at that huge lift that you're seeing online. Like there's this, to get.
Yeah, I think that I think with the end goal of, especially with social media, because if you can type in powerlifting on Instagram, and a lot of accounts will come up, and you'll see people doing PBs and everything like that, but they have still followed a process from the first week all the way through, but that's just the end product. One thing that I wanted to touch on with because obviously the end goal is to do a 1 rep max, or get a PB or anything like that. What about people who are just on the fringe of they've done a little bit of strength training, they've potentially come from a different sport, whether it be rugby, football, or running, or anything like that, and they don't feel comfortable doing a 1 rep max? Where's sort of because they can still see they're getting stronger, but where's sort of their end goal to try and increase the weight, but not necessarily doing a 1 rep max?
I think it depends, right? So if you're coming into strength to improve your performance on the field, then to me, that's totally shifting the goal. So yes, it's cool to see numbers go up, but at the end of the day, you're not going to sacrifice your performance on the field to hit like you're saying, to hit a 1 rep max, or even just to push weight in general. So it's totally dependent. Those people, to me, I want to know about how they're feeling on the field, like how's the performance on the field? How are you feeling in that direction? And obviously you want to see improvement in that from the weight room. Right. So like that, they're feeling stronger, their endurance is up, they're feeling more agile and working on all those different things. And that to me is going to make them want to get in the weight room more.
Yeah, definitely.
I think as strength coaches, we know how important the weight room is, both for strength and all of the other things you can train within the weight room. But sometimes team sport athletes, or someone that just wants to get stronger, but maybe not want to hit a 1 rep max, don't necessarily understand how much it can benefit them until they experience it.
Yeah.
And in a way, it's more time, more work, spending so much time in another avenue, getting better and putting in work.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think there's always, from maybe a team sport aspect, that sometimes that a one rep max has, everyone thinks of what potentially could go wrong and the bad side of things.
Right.
Whereas actually, it's also an opportunity to show all the work that you've put in beforehand. As well, with mentioning that you played football or soccer, and then did some running and that sort of stuff. Did you, because some people who start enjoying the strength training might not have done squat, bench, and deadlift. They might have used a trap bar, or they might have done other things. When it comes to people who are or beginners wanting to get involved in a little bit more of the powerlifting side of things, have you had any experience or thoughts of people who are transitioning over from doing different lifts?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and also I feel like you could put in the same category, different but same. People that are starting at zero, right?
Yeah.
For instance, with no experience. I think meeting people where they're at is very important. People that are coming from a background of experience, especially if there's success in whatever they're transitioning over from, still allowing them to see success in what they're good at while mixing in the things they need to be a powerlifter, right? So the squat and deadlift is going to be important. Very similar to, I think, why I was able to enjoy weightlifting so much. I was still able to do what I was good at while learning this whole new art. And I think that's very similar for people that are transitioning to powerlifting. For the brand new lifter, I always feel like it's reeling them in a little bit because, again, they want to squat, bench, and deadlift. They want to get under the bar. They want to pull that weight off the ground. Sometimes you got to start with a goblet squat, and get to the bar, depending on how new you are. And I have had some lifters that have never touched a weight, so it's like, okay, we're not even just new to powerlifting, we're new to weightlifting in general, lifting weights in general, but you want to compete. So we will get you there, but patience is going to be key. Like we were talking about before, though, with a linear progression, if they can see that they're making progress, they're going to be cool with it, and they're going to understand that they will get to the end goal. And as long as you keep giving them that positive feedback and you're teaching them things and they're growing both as a lifter and growing in strength, they're going to be happy with it and they're going to continue on,
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting that you say that, I think beginners can be at different points. So beginners who have, have never touched any weight before, who have come in and just want to get stronger and progress from there. But then also beginners coming from something else and potentially wanting to give powerlifting a go, because I know when you say beginners, that could be quite a broad spectrum of people, whereas actually, where they're starting and what they're wanting to learn can be different on where they're coming from. And as well, I think when we're looking at and you mentioned about keeping them motivated, positive feedback, and seeing progress, when you're learning something new and can see going from a goblet squat to a back squat or whatever it may be, or powerlifting to weightlifting, if you're always learning something new, it keeps you interested, which I think is the good thing about strength training, that there's different avenues that you can take it down. There's powerlifting, weightlifting, strongman, and there's a lot more routes people can take. The next progression from that then is, what are you looking for, or how do you know when the next progression is going to come up, when you want to, like you used that example there of someone going from a goblet squat to the next progression along the chain, or if progress is starting to slow down, what are you looking for in changing things up a little bit?
So I think twofold. So for people that are progressing in terms of like progressing from, say, the goblet squat to the back squat, some of it's obviously technique, what it looks like, literal strength, but also confidence. And you can see that grow in someone, after you've been coaching for a while, you can just tell, like, okay, they're ready. And it might be like you're hitting your set of goblet squat. You can see it in the person. It's like, hey, why don't we try a back squat today? And just mix it in slowly as you see the confidence grow. For someone that's hitting, I was kind of like hitting a wall, right? Like, say you're just not seeing progress in one of the lifts for some reason, which is going to happen to everyone at some point. I think at that point, if it's the lifter that's been with you, hopefully you've built a huge amount of trust. And that's when that trust comes into play, because you're going to have to ask them, like, hey, let's take a step back. Let's reevaluate. We need to change something and look at why. Sometimes it's just you've hit your kind of I don't want to say genetic limit, right? You can always continue to grow, but it's going to slow down. Like as you get closer to that, your progress is going to slow down, and that is okay. That's going to happen to everyone. That happens to the best lifters in the world. They're looking for, to add a kilo a year onto their total. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you are going to have to step back and reevaluate and see what needs to change, which can take a huge amount of trust. Same thing as when you get a new lifter coming in that's hitting, wants to see progress. You're going to have to obviously lay out a plan for them and kind of explain, because they're going to be more knowledgeable, why you're doing things a certain way, because most likely they're coming to you from someone else because they need a change. They're looking for a change. They're looking to progress, but they're going to not want to know why you're doing certain things because it's going to be different. And again, you're going to ask that trust because they're kind of blind and just hoping they're going to make progress with you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's interesting, there's a couple of sides from that. I'll pick in a couple of points that you said there, is that I think trust between a coach and a client is, I always think it's I know, powerlifting and weightlifting is quite an individual sport, but also the relationship that you have with the coach and the lifter, it's a team effort. You need to speak about what's going to be the plan, because, the lifter is the one who's experienced it and can feel it, and the coach is looking at there and trying to point them in the right direction. There's also the flip side of that, of people who do like their own programming and then are seeking out a coach to try and see how they can progress from there. And it's on from that, because obviously you said there about if you hit a wall, or if you hit a plateau, are there such a thing, or is it you just need to have a little bit of a tinker around, and then you can look for the next progression? What are your thoughts on that?
I think you need a tinker. The problem is, the first tinker, you got to be a little flexible, right? So you got to try some things out. Percent, you got to tinker around a little bit, and with that, you definitely need some patience.
You still there?
Am I frozen? Yeah, sorry. I can't tell because I can see you moving.
All right. Can you still hear me and everything?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you lose me?
It just froze a little bit. I couldn't tell whether you'd stopped speaking or I'd frozen.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So like you're saying, I definitely think that you can always get progress, but it's not actually be willing to be patient as both during like the communications with the coach and the lifter at that point, especially.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one thing that is a really good value to have in strength sports is patience. The biggest example, or the main example I always use, is when obviously the gym was open and it was normal, and people could come into the gym over in the UK. Ran a powerlifting club, and that was mainly for sort of beginners and intermediates, and the intermediates looking to then compete. And I've been stuck at this weight for, I don't know, a couple of weeks. Right? How long have you actually been lifting for? How long have you been doing the powerlifting lifts? Or maybe 3 months, 4 months, or whatever. And it's like, well, there's some lifters who have been stuck on a certain weight, for maybe a year or a year and a bit, and it's taken them, trial and error to try and figure out, what they need to do to progress from there. So yeah, I think exactly what you said there, patience, I think is definitely a good value to have. When it comes to obviously we mentioned there about if there is a plateau, it just comes around to tinkering with your programming and looking at solutions. Where do you think sometimes people get it wrong or go wrong when it comes to changing things around, or keep doing the same thing but expecting to progress when it may not be working as well as where it has been?
Right. So I think if you're doing the same thing and you change something, right? I think at that point, it's a little bit pivotal. So you got to change, you got to look at where is the weakness and really change things to that and hopefully continue your progress. I think at that point, the biggest mistake that I see will take the whole thing, scrap many new things, but then you never really know what's working and what's not, what's going to make you progress the most quickly and the most efficiently. And also the other part of that is also, to keep healthy. Part of lifting obviously comes with injuries, and they can be minor or major, but can impede on your progress. So you want to stay as healthy as you can during that process. And it's really important to change things a little bit lower when you're tinkering around, so that you do know what's going to work the best. And you can't just change things for a week and expect all of a sudden you're going to see this progress. Like, you almost need to change it for, your next cycle, your training cycle, to really dive in. Because it does take, it takes a little while for strength progress. It doesn't happen overnight when you're not a beginner anymore.
Yeah, definitely. It's not as though you're just going to do 1 week of a program and then all of a sudden, squat, bench, or deadlift is going to increase. Just touching on that, when it's because you hear a lot of people that they'll recycle programs. So maybe the 5-3-1 or 5x5 or whatever it may be. What are your thoughts on people rerunning programs, or do you think it should be okay? Let's have a look at the program that we've done. Let's have a review, change it around, and then progress it? Or have you done same programs again, and then after maybe a couple of runs of that program, you've then looked to change it?
I think it depends. Terrible answer. The answer everyone hates, right? But you're just running it by yourself, and if you're doing that, are you seeing as you're reading the program? Cool. Then why would you need to change it now?
Yeah.
You may not need to change it now. Or more hands-on hands. There's some refinement. Each training cycle doesn't mean totally different, right? It can be very similar, and a lot of programs are going to be very similar, cycle to cycle, year to year, with those little tiny changes, kind of that I was talking about before, kind of how you were saying tinkering. Like, I like that word when you're tinkering with a program. It's not like you're scrapping it. There's probably so many great things. You don't need a whole new program, but you need little tiny changes. So I think that running the same program over and over, if you're seeing progress that you're happy with, cool. If not, that's when you got to look at it. And probably wouldn't recommend if you ran again, you're like, that meat kind of sucked. Probably wouldn't be like, hey, let's try it a third time. Something needs to give at some point to see progress that you want to.
Definitely. I think as well, because we mentioned a little bit at the start that especially with the linear periodization side of things, you can probably Google any program and some form of program will come up, which I know I've done it when I first started first started lifting, but then also as the more experience you get, you can realize that actually, even though that this is maybe just a cookie cutter program that you found on the internet, you can run it and then have a review like what you've mentioned, and then alter it so that it's specific to you. You don't have to just change. You don't have to just do it all the time. And then maybe once people have experienced that a little bit, they can then experience what it's like working with a coach, where it's going to be a little bit even more specific to the needs that you want to in changes. And one thing it was a post that you put up about doing something a little bit different, which I kind of anytime we speak with people, I think powerlifters can be a little bit of a creature of habit in terms of the days that they'll squat, bench, and deadlift. And what are your thoughts on trying something new or trying something different? And what are the pros and cons of that when it comes to training?
Mm-hmm. So I think it can be a great thing. Try something completely I think the benefit of it is kind of longer, like impacting, especially locally, it will keep them lifting longer, which in turn they'll end up stronger. The longer you lift, as long as you're doing it in an intelligent way, you're going to get stronger. There's no question about that. The detriment is some people, again, kind of, you have to pile something completely new on. So there's to also do like, I feel like a trend over here. But if you pile like two complete different sports on top of each other without considering the volume of each sport and recovery, it can greatly impede your progress for powerlifting.
Yeah.
A sprint triathlon or something. And I just have an honest conversation with them if they're in a competitive season for a year. You can do both, but you may not see as much progress. And if you're okay with that, I'm okay with that. Let's just make sure you're recovering well, and we'll go from there. That's the biggest thing to keep in mind when you're trying something new.
Yeah, definitely. And I think because I think trying something a little bit different sort of breaks up I don't really like using the word monotony, because I enjoy the powerlifting lifts, but because obviously it's not like football or rugby or basketball where you're playing every week. I think because you've got so much time between competitions, sometimes it's good to have something a little bit different. But when we sort of spoke about the trying something different in terms of the variables, or if you've just been working with a percentage-based program or an RPE-based program, how have you sort of built trust with your lifters, and maybe explain them coming from a different method to then maybe thinking, right, let's give this a go?
So specific to powerlifting?
Yeah.
Like literally trying a variation.
Yeah.
Again, I think that if they've been a client for a while, it's definitely a trust thing. But regardless, you're likely changing it for a couple of reasons. One, maybe they're your best friend guinea pig client, right? But they're going to try something new because sometimes something new works,
Yeah.
Or perhaps most of the time they're going to be the person that is looking for progress, that they've been running a program, they saw great progress, it's slowing down, and we need to try something different. I think that kind of again, like I keep going back to the communication piece of it, but usually explaining why you're doing something to the lifter is all they really want to know. And it can be whether you're going percentage to RP, or maybe you're trying a variation of a lift, or maybe they compete sumo and you're going to take sumo out and throw conventional in. Why the heck am I doing that? And as long as you can explain to them why they're doing it and what we're looking to get of a benefit from doing that, it usually gets them invested and excited about it, which is the important part, because you want them to attack their training. You want them to be excited about training. And if you look at all of the different powerlifters around the world, say, right, there are so many different methods of training, and vastly different, right? You got linear progression, you got West Side, you got RPE based, there's so many different variations of training, yet people get strong with all of these different methods. So I'm a big believer that there's probably a best way for you as an individual, but there's probably not one method or one program that's the best.
Yeah.
So it's finding that happy ground for everyone on where they're going to see the most progress, and they're going to be happy as a lifter.
Yeah, I think that was quite a good quote there, that that you mentioned, that there's loads of different styles of programming out there, and if you follow, because obviously everyone knows about them, because the work, and that sometimes certain programs are going to be affiliated with certain powerlifting brands or lifters, and you see what they've done on the platform, and if you follow the program in some shape or fashion, you are going to get stronger. But on the flip side of that, rather than a coach saying, what about this? Do you think this will work? Have you ever had any lifters come to you and say, what about if we try this? And, sometimes from a coach's point of view, have you ever had it where it's trying to maybe convince them, maybe let's not do that, or
sure. I feel like half of the time as a coach, you're like trying to back people off the edge. Well, let's see if. I think as a coach, you just have to be comfortable with that too, and having that conversation, especially if a lifter is very excited about something. But again, I think that if someone really wants to do something, right? Say in my programming, I don't traditionally program people with like bands and chains, right? Yeah. Like that's not a traditional part of my personal programming. However, if I see a lifter that's very excited about that and they just got these at the gym and blah, 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 if I throw a couple of sets of bench in there, is it going to hurt them? No. Yeah. Is it going to make them happy and more excited about their program? Likely. Is it going to keep them in lifting longer? Most likely. So will I do it? Absolutely. Like it's not going to throw so much volume on them that they can't recover from, So I think as a coach too, like I feel like I'm a coach for my lifters, I coach because of my lifters. So for me, at the end of the day, I have a couple of personal goals as a coach. I want to get them to their goals, whatever that might be. I want them to get stronger, right? That's usually why they're coming to me. But I also want them to be happy as lifters. And for everyone, that is so different and what that means.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing that you mentioned there is you want them to keep lifting and and enjoy the process a little bit. And I think it is one of those things where there's I quite like this quote. I'm probably going to say it completely wrong, but where it's a really strict program where people don't enjoy it, but there's a little bit more flexibility where people enjoy it, but it maybe isn't the most strictest and the most efficient program that there is. And I think it's finding that balance of, like, if people have got some, like what you mentioned, got some new kit in the gym, because everyone gets excited I still get excited when there's new kit in the gym. Yeah, you want to play around and use it, but then equally, you've got to think about, right, how much can I put this in? How much can I put in the program compared to the actual, the work that I need to do? That's still the goals for there. Which, I agree with. Has there been any sort of ideas you've ever taken to your coach to say, oh, can I give this a go, or I'll trial this?
Not like I follow my coach. See, I would say my biggest fault is program, and then you know what I mean? I might mix in other things that aren't necessarily on my training program. Athletes that lifting for as long as I've been lifting, and then also being involved in athletics. I have a very awareness of my body and what I can and can't do. That would be smart. And I also know if I'm in getting close to a meet and it's an important meet and I want to do well, you got to stick to the program. You can't just be like throwing things in willy-nilly. I'm more in the sense as an athlete will go with feedback of how things went. And look for what they think should be changed or not changed, because I know that my coach will likely throw what I need in the training rather than what I necessarily and that's one of the perks of having a coach. It's good to give the people what they want, right? potentially as a coach, but as you get coach.
Yeah, I caught the last bit of it, and then my screen went off. Yeah, when you said there about putting in what they want rather than what they need, I think it gets to a certain point where where it needs to be a little bit more. I don't know whether discipline's the right word, or if you've got competitions coming up where this is where we need to get the work done, and then after the competition, then you can maybe have a little bit of an experiment. I know for me, so there wasn't any British Championships last year. But the 2 years before that was sort of like my first couple of years at nationals, and the difference from my first year at nationals compared to the second, my mentality, if you like, or the variation that I wanted to do, it kind of switched us to be, actually, I need to focus on this a little bit more. And I think that's a natural progression that people have through their lifting career. When they're beginners, they can do a meet, a powerlifting meet, and then they can go off, maybe do something else, and then come back to powerlifting. Right. But I think the more people progress, that they need to definitely dial in those a little bit, and then moving slightly on, obviously, as powerlifters, it's not like a full-time job. We're not multi-millionaire footballers or
too bad, right?
Like
a good full-time job.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's still the outside world and life to be getting on with, which leads to obviously training while still being pregnant, and then training afterwards. How was that? Because obviously that's a big difference to how everything has been. How did you find that? How was training afterwards? And sort of what advice and recommendations would you give to people? Because I know for me, there's I train quite a lot of guys, but I also train quite a lot of women lifters as well, which some are coming to a point where they're either going to be expecting, or that's within the on the cards, if you like, in the future. So how did you find the sort of experience?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, like you were saying, your first year, second year of nationals, you dialed it in, right? Like you got a little bit more serious, you refined things. For myself, I was probably within my third year of powerlifting was when I won nationals in US as a 57 and went to world. And I was very dialed in, like during that year in every aspect, and made a lot of sacrifices on the social end of things in my life, right? So when we say balance in life, there wasn't any balance, right? But I was happy because that was my goal at the time.
Yeah.
After that, I competed in powerlifting for pretty much a year, but in a way that I needed to have some fun again. Like I wanted to continue powerlifting, but for me, I needed to take a step back and include a little bit more balance, have some fun, and like find some fun under the barbell again. And it's funny, my husband and I were, planning on having children since we got married, which was 4.5 years ago. And I kept kind of waiting, like to feel ready. And I was really enjoying lifting, and had this big goal of I wanted to go to Worlds and, hopefully win. That didn't happen, but wanted to go to Worlds and compete at Worlds. And that happened. And I still wasn't like satisfied yet. I don't know. It sounds weird. And I was like, I'm still not ready to have children. We kept competing. And it wasn't until I literally had a meet and just had fun. And in my head, it was like, I can go get pregnant, have a child, and come back. And even if I'm just competing to, yes, of course, do the best that I can. I'm a competitive person. That's never going to not be a part of my nature, but have fun more than like, I want to go to Worlds and win Worlds, I'm going to be okay with that. And I kind of had to get there myself, in that like mental, I guess, space, because I've never been there my whole entire life. Like I've grown up as an athlete, so I've never been in the space of I'm going to lift to have fun. And I know that's not the same for everyone. That's very different for everyone. But once I was there, I was like, all right, let's let's have a baby. Didn't know it was going to be 2 babies. But it made me enjoy the whole experience of lifting while pregnant and now getting back to lifting. The coolest part about right now, like we were saying, is linear progression. I've never really been a beginner lifter where there's been this huge linear progression because I'm starting at really 0. And when, yes, my progression is going to be faster because I do have that obviously huge background and I'm still strong. But when I say I'm starting at 0 from when I gave birth, I was starting at 0, like I was, had a C-section, so needed help like getting up initially. Granted, progression is very fast because the body is smart and the body does remember. But again, you have to take it slow so that you can be intelligent about it and not injure yourself in any way as your body's healing. And there's other stresses placed on it and you're not getting as much sleep and all of those things. So for me, the whole experience has been kind of cool, but I think the reason behind that is because I was so ready for it.
Yeah.
I think if I wasn't, I would have been much more anxious about it and anxious about like losing strength rather than thinking about how cool it is that now I get to experience this huge linear progression and regaining strength and see that progress again.
Yeah. So, you said they're starting from 0, and I think what's key is you said there about obviously your background in being an athlete in the background of training that you've had, and I think people's starting point or people's zeros is relative to them. Like not everyone's starting from the same the same point, and the fact is that wherever that starting point is, you are going to be able to see a little bit more progression. And one of the things from the outside of it, maybe not the training side of things, but I've got a couple of clients who have recently had children, and obviously the biggest thing, as a coach, you want to say, are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting enough food?
Mm-hmm.
Are you, and how has the adjustment been with the sleep side of things and the nutrition side of things? Has it placed a little bit more just enjoyment on the training side of things, and the other side is going to be something a little bit later down the line? How have you sort of attacked that, if you like?
It's interesting because again, that when I was pre-children, so I have pre-pregnancy, those things for me were so important and so dialed in, and right now they're the best that I can. Sleep is totally out of my control, right? That part is I'm just up to whatever happens. The nutrition side, obviously, more in my control, right? Takes energy, but much more in my control. I still have control over what I'm eating. More challenging, but I still have control over that. Taught me how to flow a lot more. Being very type A, and I trained previously. Covered as you want for each session. You have to be willing to adjust more with it in the session, and just for me, focuses on consistency. So know that each training session I have may not be perfect, but if I'm doing it, I'm going to get back to where I want to be. And that's the most important part for me right now. Yeah. It's kind of respect, I guess, or huge on that. Gone from just be fit, really, because I've never, again, like had that experience. I know about it like physiologically and what's happening, but personally have never really had it. So I think in a lot of ways it's going to make me a much better coach because of that. I mean, once I honestly, I know I said this before and it sounds funny, but once I started moving at like age 3, started running around trying to keep up with my older brother, I like never stopped. And this forced me to stop for an extended period of time with no option. Right. Yeah. So it's really given me like this whole new respect and understanding of people that are starting at whatever their 0 is and is very uncomfortable every training session.
Yeah, and that's why, I wanted to sort of cover that topic a little bit, because I know for me, I'm not going to be able to relate to the experience that you've had, or with the lifters that I'm coaching. But I wanted the listeners and the clients that I've been coaching with to see that, look, it isn't like, oh no, everything's come to a stop, like I'm never going to be able to get under a barbell again. Like there is like with anything, there's going to be a time where, right, actually we need to slow things down a bit. But I think the good thing, and going back to one of the earlier points you made about being patient, is you are going to get back to a point where you're going to be able to compete on the platform. It isn't going to be a case of, nope, that's it, no more barbell work. Yeah,
I think the important thing in my mind that I've tried to think about and just kept in mind throughout the whole process, so from day one, isn't of after I gave birth, isn't necessarily what can I not do, can I? So it's not powerlifting, it's not barbell training, but it's something that I could do and I had control over. And then, okay, I can breath work and start working on my core. Like, great, let's do that once a day. Okay, I can do body weight things. So what can I do to help me down the road? I think as lifters, following a program, seeing progression, wanting to get better, looking for things you can control. How are we going to tweak things from not just training, but sleep and nutrition to get better? We're so used to having control over things. And when you have kids, especially when you have babies and they're, you just gave birth, like you don't have control over 95% of things that are going on, but there are some things that you can do. And I think that doing those small things, yes, they will help you down the road, but it also will make you feel better. And for me, I know that doing what I could and knowing that, yes, it's going to help me be healthy and be stronger, it also made me feel better from a mental standpoint. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy,
Yeah, I think that's and that's one of the biggest that, because whenever I have check-ins with clients, or whenever I see them in the gym, is always how are you feeling, how's your day been? And I think the biggest part is throughout our chat we've mentioned about motivation and being able to see progress. And I think all those things become a little bit easier if you're feeling good and you're in that right mental state, if you like, because I know, especially with everything that's going on now with lockdowns and everything like that, I think it can be quite hard to be like, right, actually, nothing I'm doing is heading in the right direction. Whereas actually, there is a lot more that can be a little bit more positive of it. And then sort of, now doing the barbell training, what's your sort of where are you wanting to take that? Is that, are we going to see you back on the platform sort of anytime soon, or how are your goals maybe adjusted now a little bit?
Yeah, so originally, obviously, before Corona started, before whole lockdowns and everything shifting, my initial plan was to go to nationals like this year in the US, which is typically October. That just got changed like last week. It's in June this year. Right. So I'm not sure what my plan is going to be. I will definitely be back on the platform. I'm just not exactly sure when. It will be this year. Just not exactly sure what my plan will be. I might, maybe if the landscape's looking good, I'll go to, I don't have to eat to go to nationals. I've already qualified, but to just go and have fun, and like get back on the platform. Or maybe I'll wait a little longer. We'll just kind of see where it takes us. But that's again something that going into pregnancy, I wanted to keep my expectations open. And now on the other side, the same thing. Like, I know I'm going to get back to the platform. I know it'll be sometime in 2021, but I'm just going to kind of see where the next couple of months take me and what happens and go from there. It's funny. I feel like I show up to each session, like keep waiting for not something to go wrong, but like to kind of, in a way, and not in a bad way, but each session is like going really well, which I think is exciting. But I'm like trying not to rush things too,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I completely get
Get
what
caught in that weird in between spot.
get you mean, because especially when you mentioned starting from your zero, if you like, and if things are going well, you start building momentum, and if things start going,
Mm-hmm.
and as well, I think I could see the excitement when you said about getting back on their platform and having fun and enjoying it. I think because there hasn't been competitions for so long. I mean, I've watched the US nationals, and I think there's been some really good contests, and being able to be able to see lifters who you see from afar, if you like, and then be able to watch them in their national competitions. I think a lot of people across the board. I know for me, I can't wait to get back on the platform, because you kind of think, oh, I've not got another competition for another 3 months or 6 months or whatever it might be. And when that turns into a year, I think everyone's kind of really excited to get back on, because they are good days. It is fun. It doesn't always have to be about, oh no, like I need to hit this. The whole reason why people got involved in strength training is because they enjoy it, and they like it.
Mm-hmm.
So quite a lot of topics covered there, with a few tangents thrown in. But the last question I wanted to ask you is, from everything that we've chatted about there, what would be your take-home points or words of wisdom for everyone listening?
Oof, words of wisdom. Honestly, I think my biggest words of wisdom to anyone that is lifting, regardless of where they're at, beginner, intermediate, elite lifter, is like, there's always more. Like, you have to believe in your abilities, and if you believe that there's more, there will be. It might take some time. It might take a lot of figuring things out sometimes, but there's always more. And I think that's the part that keeps me coming back.
Yeah, I think
and it can be one lift that you want more in, but that's the part that keeps people coming back, and that's exciting. And I think that the belief in yourself that I think you can gain, the discipline and belief in yourself that you can gain from powerlifting, helps you outside of powerlifting. And I think that's kind of the beauty of the sport.
Yeah, definitely. I think the standing joke is that after most powerlifting competitions, I always say, "Oh, I'm going to give strongman a go. I'm going to go give this a go."
Sure.
But actually, when you see the lift that you've got, and now it's like, oh well, actually, if I put an extra couple of kilos on this lift, I can get this lift. And I think that's all it's the wanting to return back, because I know at first my goals were to hit certain milestones in kilos, and now it's got to a point where, well, it doesn't sound as good in kilos, but if I say it's in pounds, if I try and hit it in pounds, this sounds a lot
I'm really gonna come over to the pound room.
Yeah, but it is that thing, there's always something that you can think. And because that at first it was like, a lot of people might be like, my main goal is to hit something on deadlift, but once that's achieved, it's like, well, I could maybe do a squat and a bench. And yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it, that there is more, and there are, that you can still get out of it what you want. So yeah, thanks a lot for taking the time to chat with me, Meg. Really enjoyed chatting with you. I hope everybody enjoyed that as much as I did, and I will see you all next week.